So it all started in June. I was experiencing vertigo, and I had just come back from my trip from Tahoe, and I was thinking it was probably just the altitude. I was thinking maybe I'm just not adjusted, and so I kind of like pushed it off to the side, and I just didn't really do anything about it for a few months. And then around September, my vertigo just got worse. It came back. I was having some dizziness, I was having nausea, I was having headaches, I had lost feeling on half of my face, and I was just starting to think like something is seriously wrong here. And so I figured I should go seek some medical help, and so I went to the doctor, and I just went to my primary so I could get some references, and they had no idea what was going on, so I asked for a reference to go see an ENT, and I figured maybe it was something with my ears because it was the vertigo. I figured maybe there was something going wrong, and they saw nothing wrong. They said that they think I must just be having muscle spasms in the back of my neck because I was just very tense, and they said it would be fixed by adding a pillow at night. And I was like, I feel like that's not gonna do much, and so I asked what the next step would be, and they were like, well, a physical therapist would probably be the next step. And so I went and went ahead and got that reference, and so I went to the physical therapist, and between the time of me going to the ENT and to the physical therapist, I had a fall, which made all of my symptoms so much worse. I think that just being jostled affected my head and affected what was going on in my brain. And so I had gone from just kind of having a slight issue of dizziness, nausea, headaches, and like vertigo to it being an everyday just getting worse. And I just was not functioning anymore. I was starting to be able to like I couldn't walk without like holding onto a wall or holding onto my parents, and I couldn't function throughout the day without like sleeping for an extra 3 hours. And I was just losing more and more feeling in half of my face, and I was like, this isn't right. And so I was excited to, you know, hopefully get treated for something. And so I went to the physical therapist, and she completely just said, no way, it's a muscle spasm. So she reassessed me, and she told me I was going to get treatment for positional vertigo and for a nystagmus, which is an involuntary movement of your eye. And so whenever you're tracking an item, your eye is kind of moving whenever you're tracking. And so I was receiving treatment for that, and I was starting to feel a little bit better. The vertigo was going away, and we had to treat that before we could get to the nystagmus, which was going to have all of the issues where I was having issues with my head. And so we proceeded on with treatment, and it was about my third time going, and we noticed that my nystagmus had changed, and so it was no longer a normal nystagmus. It had changed from the side to side to an upbeat nystagmus, which is a sign of a central nervous system issue. And so because of these reasons, she immediately stopped the session. She actually got the other physical therapist to come over and check me out too, and I had no idea what was going on. It was kind of funny because I was just sitting there, and she was like, oh no, and I was like, oh no, you never want to hear that whenever you're getting treated for something. And so then the other guy came over, and she's like, do you see what I see? And he's like, yeah. And they both sound very solemn. And so I was just like, this is not good. And I'm just sitting here like, what's gonna happen? And it was so bad. And so I'm just thinking like, what's the worst thing, you know? And she's just like, alrighty, so your nystagmus has changed, you know, it's a sign of a central nervous issue. You need to go see a neurologist like as soon as possible, because, you know, I can't treat you for this. And so I was like excited that like hopefully I was gonna get better treatment, but I was also super nervous because I was like, now I have no idea what's going on. They weren't super calm about it, and so I was just really nervous. And so I called and set up an appointment for the neurologist, but they actually didn't have any openings until January. And so I was like, there's no way I can wait until January, but like I can't not go see a neurologist because I'm just having all of these issues. And so I got on like a call list for if anything opened up, and so a couple days later they called me and they had an opening for the next week. And so I think that God really opened that door for me. Otherwise I just think I would have gotten in such worse shape. And so I went to the neurologist and they basically assessed me to see if I had like an autoimmune disorder or if I had like a type of migraine. I was seeing the nurse practitioner at the time, and she was just kind of like generally assessing me, but I couldn't tell if she really could understand what was going on with me. And so she ended up getting the doctor of the practitioner coming to see me, and he immediately came in and he was like, oh my gosh, like something's wrong here. And he started noticing a lot of things that this nurse hadn't noticed, and he had noticed I was having some drooping in some of my face. I was seeing double vision, and he just like, I couldn't hold my hands up for longer than like 3 seconds without being so fatigued. And he was like, these aren't good signs. And so he agreed that I should get an MRI. And so I was like, well, this is a good step, you know, hopefully the MRI will show something if the test for the autoimmune disorder come back negative and if the medicine for the migraine doesn't work. And so I took the medicine for the migraine. It didn't work. I did it that weekend, and then I got my blood drawn, and I was waiting to hear back if it was an autoimmune disorder or if the MRI would show anything. So later that next week is when I got the MRI, and I went in that morning and things had just gotten even worse. At this point, like, I'm just barely functioning. I can't even think without just being in pain. And so I was really ready. And so I went and we got the MRI scan taken, and I was told I wouldn't hear my results until January when I had my follow-up appointment with the neurologist. And they don't disclose this information over the phone. Typically they want you to come back in person so they can describe it to you. But about 3 or 4 hours after I got my MRI, I got the call from my neurologist saying they got my results. And so I was a little bit confused because I knew that they didn't disclose the results over the phone, but yet she called, so I figured maybe she was just telling me they got the results. I was not sure like what the protocol was for the situation. But then she continued and she said, like, unfortunately they had found a large mass. They had found a tumor inside of a cyst the size of like a chicken egg, so it's a pretty decent sized shape, and it was between my cerebellum and my brainstem, and it was blocking spinal fluid from flowing from the top of your brain down back. And so this is a really dangerous issue because if your spinal fluid isn't flowing properly and if it's pooling, eventually you're gonna become paralyzed for a little bit, and then I would have had brain damage, unconscious. Honestly, if I didn't die from that situation, I'd be in a really bad shape. And so it was very important that I get surgery as soon as possible, is what she told me. And so she said that I should go to the emergency room right away, and that I should get surgery as soon as possible to, you know, avoid these circumstances. And so I was out with a friend whenever I got this call, so I had to go back home and tell my parents everything. And we went to a hospital in Dallas, and we got checked in. I had to go to the emergency room, and it was kind of an interesting experience because of COVID. My parents couldn't come back with me, and so I was having to sit in a waiting room to get checked in for about 2 hours after hearing this major things going on in my life all by myself. And it's just really difficult to, you know, not have people with you. And so I just was trying to text. I was, just trusting in God, and I finally get admitted back, and they take me, and they're like, yeah, like, you're gonna get surgery, we're gonna get this all worked out. And so at this point I'm like, well, it's real, like, I am getting surgery. I kept hoping that, like, maybe it wouldn't be as bad as they're saying, but they're all agreeing. And so I just continued on, and in that waiting period before being checked into the official hospital, I was still in the emergency room, and I was checked in there. I started kind of having thoughts over, like, what am I gonna do in this situation, Like, is this gonna be a time for me that I'm gonna trust God, or is this gonna be a time that I start to question, like, what's happening here? And I wanted to choose early on how I was gonna react in this situation. And so I decided, like, I want to use the situation to trust God and to be a light in the hospital. And so I made that mindset, and I was ready to go. I was like, let's do whatever's gonna happen, and God's will be done. Yeah, so there are a lot of pivotal moments in this story for me. One is the one that I just shared about, choosing to trust God in the situation. I think that that's something that just really made my focus in this situation. I wanted to be intentional in trusting God over all the circumstances. And so that was the first pivotal moment. And then another pivotal moment that I had was the night before the surgery. So I finally get checked into the emergency, or not, I get checked into the ICU from the emergency room. And I start thinking, like, wow, like, this is it, like, I'm having surgery in the morning. And I was staying positive. I was like, like, I really trust God. I believe that, like, his will be done, and that's what matters. And so I really just didn't think about death a whole lot, but I did allow myself a moment to consider it, because it is a scary situation. It is something that, you have no idea what the outcome is going to be. And so I had to ask myself, like, what if this is my time? And I was looking back over my life. I was looking over, my highs and my lows, and I just was really considering, like, am I proud with, like, what I've done in my life? Like I want to honor God with my life. And so I just really wanted to, like, be in check and, like, look inward at myself and reflect upon that. And so I remember I told my mom in this situation that, like, I'm not ready to die yet. Like, I want to share Christ with more people. Like, that's my heart. But, even if it is my time, like, I'm okay with that, because I'll get to be with Jesus. And, I was thinking over the scriptures. I was thinking over when Paul said to live is Christ and to die is gain. And I was thinking over that, if I get to live out of this, like, I get to share this testimony, or if this is my time, I get to be with Jesus, and Jesus is better. Jesus is, Jesus is everything. And so I was thinking over that, and I was thinking that my life is a loss if I'm not truly living it for God. And so even in these moments, I wanted to be clear over what my direction was and what I wanted my life to be focused to. And so I just was really unsure what was going to happen. And I, went back to my first pivotal moment. I was like, well, I'm trusting God, and I know he has a plan. And so I was able to just move forward, and I finally put that thought to rest, because I had settled on it, and I had settled that, Jesus is better. And that was a very pivotal moment for me, just experiencing what I would be thinking if it was my last moments. And I remember just going into the surgery waiting room, I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna wake up from this. And I just remember I was like, like, alrighty, Lord, your will be done. And then I kind of passed out because of the anesthesia, and it was crazy. But another pivotal moment for me was waking up from the surgery. So everything had kind of worked out. I was not sure what was happening. I was kind of in the room by myself. I think I had maybe a nurse or two. I was very out of it. But my parents weren't in the room yet. The doctors weren't in the room yet. I was kind of in shock. I was like, okay, I'm awake. And so I started like trying to like make sure I could feel everything. I was trying to figure out if anything had gone wrong. I was like, can I even think? I was like, wait, I am thinking. And so I was just really trying to assess myself. And then my parents come in and the doctors come in and they say that everything went better than expected. They really were unsure of what the outcome was going to be, because there was, with where it was at, it was in a very like dangerous spot, and there were fears that I would bleed out. Basically the cyst was like a blood clot almost, and so they had to like cut open like a small piece and then like make sure that it wouldn't like bleed out. So it was just so many small things that they had to do to get this tumor. And so they said that all of it went better than they expected. There was no issue of me bleeding out. Basically they could not believe like how well it went, and I really truly believe that it was a miracle, and I believe that God really provided. And I had a lot of people that were praying for me, and I appreciate those prayers so much, and I truly believe that that is why everything went okay too. And so I woke up from that surgery, and after my parents came in, I was like, well, everything went great, you know, I'm not really concerned about anything health-wise right now, like everything's good. And so then my next immediate thought was, what am I gonna do with my time here? And I decided that first night that, you know, this was either going to be a testimony or this would be my end. And I was like, well, it wasn't my end, so that means this is a testimony. And so I was like, how am I going to live this out for the next few days while I'm in recovery? And so I kind of chose at that point that I was going to be like the best patient for all the nurses. I just wanted to show the love of Christ, and I wanted them to experience, you know, the joy that I have in my relationship with God. And so that was just a really pivotal moment for me. Well, there was a lot of things I learned about God in this experience. I learned a lot about having peace, because no matter the outcome, I was going to accept it, and I was happy to accept it. And it's rare to feel that kind of peace whenever, you know, you're looking at death and you're not. And so I just really wanted to really grow from that experience, and I have so much trust in God because of that, because, you know, no matter what happens, we have faith that He will be faithful. And so that was something that I really learned. And then another thing was just like His love and goodness and kindness, His mercy. He provided me another chance to go out and continue being faithful to His word, and to continue and making disciples, and to continue and growing closer to Him. And so because of all these things, it makes me want to live my life even more for Christ. I want to be more intentional in my conversations, and I want to be more intentional in the people I hang out with and how I'm hanging out with them. And is it something that's God honoring, or how can I turn this into something that's God honoring, you know? And I don't know, I feel like there's just so many things whenever it comes to that, and I truly, I don't even have words. Encouragement that I have is that God is faithful, and He will always be faithful. Something I really learned in this circumstance is, you know, it's not our will but God's will. And so if our desire is for God's desire to happen, then like He's always gonna be faithful, you know? It's all about our mindset, and is our mindset God's mindset? And so I just really want to encourage you to have Well, to first off reflect in yourself, is that true of you? Is your mindset God's mindset? Are your desires God's desires? And if not, is there something that you need to change in your life to be more aligned with Christ? And that was one of the biggest things that I walked away learning. And then I also just learned so much about like God's faithfulness, and He's been so good to me, and He is our healer and our provider and sustainer. And I just want to encourage you that no matter the situation, no matter the circumstance, you know, God will provide in a way that will bring Him glory, and that's what we can have peace in, and we can have joy in that too. And so that's what I want to encourage you with.